Welcome back to Murder with Friends. Today we're going to be discussing the Black Dahlia with my friend Sara Spadacene. Right now we are going to dive into the discovery of the body and also the aftermath with the media. But before we get into that, I found a clip from what I believe is a TV movie on YouTube that sort of plays out the discovery of the Black Dahlia. They got a couple things wrong, but let's take a look at this.
Are you with the police?
Yeah, detectives. You got reporter written all over you. How'd you get here?
I got a buddy in the crime lab. He called me.
What's up?
Look for yourself.
Good gee. Hi, Lee.
Hi, Harry.
See, the crime lab didn't waste any time. You got anything I can move on fast?
Somebody made 2 trips.
Yeah. Let's get the coroner down here. And, notify dispatch, have some cars, block off the area.
What kind of a butcher would do a thing like that?
Not exactly a butcher.
Wonder who she is.
Hate to think, Finest. Somebody's little girl.
That's actually sad.
Yeah, I actually watched that whole movie, and it's a very sweet movie, if a little bit of the time, shall we say. That was an of the time sort of TV movie. Now, what they get right about that is that, yes, she was drained of her blood, she was washed clean, and she had, most notably, as we all remember the Black Dahlia, a cut from ear to ear, effectively, in what they call like a Glasgow smile. The killer was still on the loose, never caught. The body was discovered January 15th, 1947. Sarah, why that is crucial is because her body was found 6 days after she was last seen.
Right.
How, like, what happened? You know what I mean? Like, because she clearly was tortured. There's evidence that she was beaten, that she was tied up. This was a woman that was held for 6 days.
That's what I was just gonna say. What I find suspicious is that, like, she didn't have anybody close enough. Like, I feel like if you or I were to go missing
For 6 days.
for 2 days, someone would be like, yo, haven't heard from you. But at the time, like, nobody filed a police report, nobody said anything. I mean, that is suspicious.
And also that when her body turned up, she was a Jane Doe. You know, that
Right.
they had to wait for people to be like, I know who that is. And I want to talk a little bit about how the discovery of the body and how people notify the family, because this is one of these elements to the story that I find insane. So a woman was walking with her daughter in that neighborhood, and she was found in Leimert Park. I'm totally butchering that name. Never been there, but it's around Baldwin Hills. And she thought that it was a mannequin because the body was posed. Her hands were above her head, and her intestines were tucked underneath her body. It was a completely staged scene.
Yeah.
And she thought that it had to have been a mannequin because the body was so pale because it had no blood in it. And it was expertly bisected at the lumbar. So again, like we see in that video, a butcher cannot have done that. This
Right.
wasn't an amateur person who was killing or dissecting a body for the first time.
Right.
That was very clear at the scene. The evidence at the scene was pretty limited, and also, as we saw in that video, reporters were all over it so early on. That would never happen today, that you would just have a reporter right by the body, that they wouldn't, put some caution tape around the scene. Yeah, just if we had been there, we could have been
Right.
like, guys, you might need this. And the photos of the crime scene were taken, some by crime scene photographers, many by reporters.
Got it.
They didn't block off the scene. And
Got it.
think about the evidence that was just trampled on because this was a hot story.
Right.
And then the way that the media handled this hot story is, again, something I want to talk about with you. So when they figured out that the body was of Elizabeth Short, how would you, if you were a reporter, how would you have responded?
I mean, you would have to inform the parents, but you would have to tell them what, actually happened as opposed to what they did.
I was gonna see if you knew.
I know.
So the version of it that I heard was that the LA Examiner called her mother and told her about the beauty contest and that she had won, got some details about her life for them to print. You know, what kind of a girl was she? Did she have a boyfriend? What were her friends like? That sort of thing. And then at the end of the phone call, they were like, JK, your daughter actually was brutally murdered. We're calling her the Black Dahlia now. And a little bit about how she got that name was also sort of made up by a reporter, although they said that her friends called her that. But what shitty friends if your friends were calling you the Black Dahlia. That's very severe.
Well, what does dahlia mean?
It's a flower. And they said that it was because of the type of flower that she wore in her hair.
Got it.
But again, it was just made up by reporters, and then it just sort of caught on. But before the name Black Dahlia caught on, there was one reporter that called it the werewolf murder.
Sweet.
Guys, come on, try harder. Anyway, so they called her and they called Elizabeth Short's mom, and they flew Elizabeth Short's mom out to Los Angeles, saying that they would help her work with the police to find the killer. And this is a part of the story that I'm confused on, and I want to get your theory on it. Apparently, Elizabeth Short's mom never actually met with police before going back to Massachusetts, that the LA Examiner sort of sectioned her off and made sure that they had sole contact with her and that she actually never got to speak with the police. How does that happen? They weren't like kidnapping Elizabeth Short's mom. How did she never get to talk to the police?
Well, that's what I was gonna say, like, you're wasting your money. Why would you fly if you're not, I don't know. It's like, why would you fly somebody out if you're not going to use them to find a murderer? And
they use it for profit for their paper.
They were just like, I brought the mom out. We brought
published
her mom
stories. We have Elizabeth Short's mom. Here's what she's saying about the murder. Here's how she's dealing with her grief. But they never actually had her speak with the police. How did the police let that happen?
Because they were corrupt at the time. It was like awful. Not that they still aren't.
That's a very good point to touch on, the corruption in the police department and sort of.
That makes me so mad. That's like beyond disrespectful.
Mm-hmm.
Like that makes me.
Kill someone?
Kill someone. No, but that's not funny. But that makes me sad for her mom. But yeah. Anyway, the LAPD was super corrupt.
Yeah, and we are going to get into that in the next segment. But before we leave this segment, we're going to be talking about the suspects and all the legacy of the Black Dahlia and the corruption in the LAPD. But before we leave, let's finish up on the media coverage and some old-fashioned 20th century slut shaming that unfortunately Elizabeth Short was on got the brunt of. Basically, magazines and papers started saying that she was last seen wearing a see-through blouse and a tight mini skirt, when indeed she was wearing an old-fashioned Hillary Clinton-esque pantsuit.
Classy.
Wouldn't be my first choice, although who knows what lesbians wore in 1947. No, they were deep in the closet. deep in the closet.
They were the ones wearing the skirts.
They wore garbage bags over their heads and hoped that they made it out alive. And they also started reporting that Elizabeth Short was, quote, prowling the streets of Hollywood.
Same.
That's insane.
That just goes to show that, like, of course they would blame the girl. Like, of course she was a whore walking around Hollywood Boulevard being
She was asking for it.
She was asking for it, and it's just like, and the sad thing is that, like, sure, in the media now they can't say, like, she was a whore, but, slut shaming still exists today.
So you think that the way that they painted her following her murder was an intentional choice so that people didn't feel as bad for her?
I think that, like, when you hear a story like that, it is sad, and so people automatically want to ask more questions. So yeah, maybe that is what they did, so that, they were like, oh, well, this girl, like, don't care too much about her because she was a slut and she deserved to die. I
also think that they used it a little bit as a cautionary tale. Don't move out to LA, like the tough city got to this girl, it's...
Yeah, who knows what their intention or motivation was, but, like, all we know is that if you do fact check, it wasn't true. Like, she was in a pretty modest...
She was a flirt. She knew that she was gorgeous. She had big dreams and didn't really have the means to pay for that.
Right, but also, like, maybe she didn't know she was gorgeous. Maybe she was self-conscious, Grace.
Maybe she was sensitive.
Maybe she was sensitive. I'm just saying, like, we can even say what we want now about her and, like, what she thought, but, all we know is that she was wearing a suit and probably, like, a super supportive bra, and,
in those days,
like, sure, it wasn't see-through.
Mm-hmm. Man, so that's a little bit about the media coverage and the aftermath of the discovery of Elizabeth Short's body. When we come back, we're going to be talking about some suspects, some conspiracy theories, and the legacy of the Black Dahlia. We'll see you then.